The morning I let them steal from me was the morning I won everything back. I know that sounds like a riddle, but by the time I finish telling you this story, you'll understand exactly what I mean. And if you're a woman who has ever been underestimated, dismissed, or made to feel like you were the problem, I want you to stay with me. Every single word of this is for you. My name is Dorothy Hargrove. I'm 71 years old. I have gray hair that I stopped dyeing 7 years ago, hands that ache on cold mornings, and a back that reminds me every single day that I am not 40 anymore. I also have 38 years of financial expertise, a mind sharper than most people half my age, and the kind of patience that only comes from burying a husband too soon and raising a son alone. That patience saved everything I had ever built. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It was a Saturday in late October, Newport Beach, California. The kind of morning where the sky and the ocean seem to argue about which one gets to be more beautiful. The sky winning with streaks of deep rose and amber, the water answering back with silver light dancing on the surface. I was on the back patio of my beach house, wrapped in my cobalt blue wool blanket, the one Robert bought me in a small shop in Edinburgh back in 1998, the year before he died. I hold on to that blanket the way some women hold on to photographs. It still smells like the cedar chest where I keep it. Some mornings, if I close my eyes and press my face into it, I can almost hear him laughing. I had my Earl Grey, I had the ocean, I had my ritual. Every morning before the sun fully commits to rising, I come out here alone. No phone, no television, no noise, just the waves, the blanket, and whatever thoughts decide to show up uninvited. It is the 1 hour of my day that belongs entirely to me, and I guard it like a treasury. At 4:47 a.m., the house phone rang. I knew before I answered. I don't know how. Call it 71 years of living. Call it intuition. Call it whatever you like. But I knew. It was Pete Sully, my overnight security guard. Pete is in his late 50s, a former Newport Beach police officer with a wide, honest face and the kind of eyes that have seen too much to be surprised by very much. His voice, when he called, told me everything. "Mrs. Hargrove, I'm sorry to disturb you this early. There's a moving truck at the front gate, a big one. Professional outfit. And your daughter-in-law is here, Mrs. Brittany. He paused. She says the house belongs to her now. She has papers. She's asking me to open the gate." I took a long, slow sip of my tea. I let the warmth of it travel all the way down. I looked at the ocean. "Pete," I said, "open the gate. Let them all in." Silence on the other end of the line. The kind of silence that means a person is wondering whether the woman they work for has finally lost her mind. "Ma'am, are you sure? Because if you want, I can call—" "I'm sure. Open the gate. And Pete, don't interfere with anything they do. Let her direct her people. Let her get comfortable." "Yes, ma'am." I set the phone down, pulled the cobalt blanket tighter around my shoulders, and watched a pelican glide low over the water. Unhurried. Certain of where it was going. She thinks she's coming to take my house, I thought. She has no idea she's walking into the last scene of a play I've been writing for 8 months. I finished my tea. Before I tell you about that morning, before I tell you what happened when Brittany Weston Hargrove walked into my home with 4 movers and a folder full of fraudulent documents, I need to tell you who I am. Because this story only makes sense when you understand what I built, what I almost lost, and why I refused to become a victim. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My father worked at a parts factory. My mother cleaned houses on the east side of town 3 days a week and made the most extraordinary pot roast you've ever tasted on Sunday nights. We were not poor, but we understood the specific weight of money in a way that only people who have had to be careful with it truly do. I earned a full scholarship to the University of Southern California. Finance. I was one of 4 women in my graduating class in that program in 1975, and I was the only one who didn't quit before getting a job, despite being told, repeatedly and by various men in various ways, that women weren't built for numbers. I am built entirely for numbers. I spent 38 years as a senior financial officer for Pacific Crown Group, a commercial real estate development firm based in Los Angeles. I started as an accounting analyst earning $14,000 a year. I retired as chief financial officer with a compensation package that made my younger self weep with disbelief. I met Robert Hargrove at a charity dinner in 1979. He was a structural engineer. Brilliant, funny, allergic to pretension, The kind of man who would spend 45 minutes helping a stranger change a tire in the rain and then not mention it to anyone. We were married in 1981. We were happy in that particular quiet way that doesn't make for dramatic stories, but makes for a very good life. Robert died of a stroke in September of 2001. He was 52 years old. Our son Nathan had just turned 22 and was in his senior year at UC Davis. I did not fall apart. I am not saying that to sound strong. I am saying it because I had a child who needed me to remain standing, debts that needed to be addressed, a job that did not pause for grief, and a very clear understanding that Robert would have been appalled if I had let the life we built together collapse because he was no longer here to help hold it up. I grieved in the mornings before anyone was awake to see it, and then I worked. By the time I retired at 67, I had the family home in Pasadena, a craftsman-style house with a garden and a lemon tree that Nathan and I planted the spring after Robert died, appraised at $5.1 million. Every single memory I have of raising my son lives inside those walls. A 2-bedroom condominium in Santa Monica that I purchased as an investment property in 2006, currently rented to a lovely couple, professors at UCLA, valued at $3.4 million. The $4,500 monthly rent is what allows me to live without asking anyone for anything. And this house, my Newport Beach beach house, $6.2 million, purchased with my retirement severance package and the savings of a lifetime of deliberate, unhurried choices. This was my gift to myself. After 38 years of managing other people's money down to the last decimal point, this was the one extravagance I permitted. A place to watch the ocean wake up every morning. A place that was entirely mine. Total assets, just under $16 million, plus retirement investments and savings. Closer to $18 million when everything is counted. I tell you these numbers not to impress you. I tell you because Brittany Weston Hargrove looked at those numbers the first time Nathan brought her to my home and decided quietly and immediately that they should belong to her. Nathan introduced her to me 6 years ago, in the fall of 2019, at a small dinner party I hosted at the Pasadena house. He was 45, had been through 2 relationships that ended without cruelty, but without much joy either. And he came through the front door that evening with the expression of a man who had just found something he was afraid to believe was real. She was beautiful. I want to be honest about that because it matters, not because beauty is a character flaw, but because Brittany wielded hers with the practiced precision of someone who understood exactly what it did to people. She was 37 years old, dark hair, perfect posture, a smile that arrived exactly when it was supposed to and stayed exactly as long as it needed to. She was wearing a deep burgundy wrap dress and low heels, dressy enough to be respectful, casual enough to seem natural. She had done her homework on what impression to make. When she took my hands in hers, she looked me directly in the eyes. "Mrs. Hargrove, Nathan has told me so much about you. Meeting the woman who raised him. I have been looking forward to this more than he knows." The right words, the right tone, the right warmth in her voice. But I have been reading spreadsheets for nearly 4 decades. I know the difference between a number that is real and a number that has been adjusted to look real. The smile reached her mouth perfectly. It did not reach her eyes at all. Her eyes, in the moments when she thought no one was looking at them, were doing something else entirely. They were moving around my living room, across the original oil paintings on the walls, the built-in bookshelves, the view of the garden through the French doors, with a quality I can only describe as appraisal. The way a person looks at a property they are considering making an offer on. I told myself I was being unfair. I told myself 38 years in corporate finance had made me suspicious of everyone. I smiled back, poured the wine, and decided to give her a chance. That chance lasted about 8 months before I could no longer pretend I wasn't seeing what I was seeing. The Sunday dinners that Nathan had kept faithfully for years began to be canceled. Brittany had plans. Brittany wasn't feeling well. They had friends visiting. Each excuse was perfectly reasonable. Together, they formed a pattern. When Nathan did come, increasingly without Brittany, which I later understood was intentional, so that I would be grateful for any access to my own son, he seemed different, slightly distracted, slightly defensive. He used phrases that didn't sound like him. "Mom, you have to understand that we need our own space. Brittany says you can be a little overwhelming sometimes." Overwhelming. I had raised this child alone from the age of 22. I had attended every graduation, every job interview debrief over the phone, every late-night call when a relationship fell apart. I had never once made him feel that my love came with a price tag. I was overwhelming now because his wife had decided that was the word for me. I said nothing. I nodded. I gave them space. I also began paying very close attention. The dinner that changed everything happened in early 2021, 14 months after their wedding. Nathan called on a Tuesday and invited me to the Meridian Club in Beverly Hills, a restaurant I genuinely love, known for its quiet booths and extraordinary sea bass. Just the three of us, Mom. It's been too long. Brittany wants to reconnect. My heart did something embarrassing when he said that. It lifted. I called my friend Beverly to tell her I was having dinner with my son and daughter-in-law, and that maybe things were turning around. I wore the plum-colored dress I save for occasions that matter. I put on the pearl necklace Robert gave me for our 25th anniversary, the one I wear when I need to feel like he's still in the room with me somehow. I arrived at the restaurant and immediately understood that I had made a mistake. The table was not set for 3. There were 12 people seated when I walked in. Brittany's parents, Howard and Carol Weston. Howard, a retired insurance adjuster from Scottsdale. Carol, a woman who wore the permanent expression of someone managing a low-grade anxiety about everything. Brittany's younger sister, Tiffany, 32, sitting next to a husband I'd met once and already forgotten. 2 couples I didn't recognize at all. Well-dressed, mid-50s, the kind of people who order the wine without looking at the price. And at the far end, half hidden behind a large flower arrangement, a man in a gray suit with silver-framed glasses who I would later learn was a specialist in elder conservatorship law. Brittany greeted me with both arms, kissed my cheek, smelled of something French and expensive. "Dorothy, you look wonderful. Come sit right here next to me." She had placed me in the center of the table, like a centerpiece, like something meant to be looked at and discussed. We ordered. The conversation was pleasant and entirely normal for 45 minutes, and I began to relax, to wonder if I had read the whole evening wrong. Carol asked about my garden. Howard talked about a fishing trip. Tiffany showed me photos of her new kitchen renovation. Then Brittany set down her wine glass. "I want to take a moment to say something," she said, her voice shifting into a register I can only describe as concerned. Warm, slightly sorrowful. The voice of someone about to share difficult news out of love. We've all noticed, and I think Nathan will agree, that Dorothy has been having some memory difficulties lately. Forgetting conversations, repeating stories, missing appointments. The table went quiet. I felt the floor shift slightly beneath me, the way it does in an earthquake. That first second where you're not sure whether it's real or whether your body is imagining it. "I'm sorry," I said, keeping my voice even. "I don't know what you're referring to." "Sweetheart, no one is blaming you." She placed her hand over mine with the gentleness of a hospice nurse. "My grandmother started the same way. We almost missed it because she was so sharp in other ways. It's nothing to be ashamed of." Carol Weston shook her head with practiced sadness. "My aunt had it too. The early stages can look like just forgetfulness. Then suddenly, she made a small, helpless gesture with her hands. I looked at Nathan. He was looking at the tablecloth. The man in the gray suit spoke for the first time. Casual, conversational, as though the thought had simply occurred to him. In situations like this, the most loving thing a family can do is establish a legal power of attorney. Someone to help manage finances, make sure nothing falls through the cracks. It protects everyone, especially the person who needs support. And there it was, the entire architecture of the evening, revealed in one sentence. This was not a dinner. This was a performance. A carefully staged public event designed to establish, before witnesses, that Dorothy Hargrove was cognitively declining and needed someone else to manage her affairs. Brittany was building a paper trail, and she had brought an audience to help her write it. I looked around the table, at the nodding heads, at the sympathetic eyes, at my son, who had still not looked up from the tablecloth. Something cold and clear moved through me. Not panic, not grief, not even anger. Not yet. Something older and quieter than any of those things. I see exactly what this is, and I am not going to give you the reaction you've scripted for me. I folded my napkin carefully. I placed it beside my plate. I picked up my purse. "Thank you for dinner," I said. "I'm afraid I'm not feeling very well. Please excuse me." Brittany made a small sound, theatrically concerned. You see? She gets disoriented so easily. It's another sign, honestly. I did not turn around. I walked out of the Meridian Club, through the gold-lit lobby, out into the cool Beverly Hills night. I hailed a cab. I sat in the back seat with my pearl necklace and my plum-colored dress in Robert's absence, and I did not cry. I waited until I was inside my own house, in my own kitchen, with the door locked behind me. Then I cried, hard and briefly, the way I have always allowed myself to cry. Completely, and then done. I took off the dress. I made myself a cup of chamomile. I sat at the kitchen table in my bathrobe and I opened the notebook I keep in the drawer by the stove. The one where I've kept grocery lists and phone numbers and small important thoughts for 30 years. I wrote 3 names: Gerald Whitfield, Dr. Patricia Oakes, Roy Tanner. I underlined each one. If Brittany Weston wants a war, I wrote beneath the names, then she has one. But it will be fought on my terms, on my timeline, and she will never see it coming. I closed the notebook. I went to bed. I slept better than I had in months. Gerald Whitfield has been my attorney for 22 years. He was Robert's college roommate at USC, a tall, precise man of 70 who wears impeccable suits and has the particular quality of listening that makes you feel, when you are speaking to him, that every word you say is being carefully filed away for later use. He drinks black coffee, despises small talk, and is the most competent person I have ever known in a professional capacity. And I have known many. He came to my Pasadena house the Monday morning after the dinner. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took his glasses off, cleaned them, put them back on. "Dorothy," he said, "this is a recognizable pattern. Elder financial abuse with a preemptive incompetency strategy. They establish perceived cognitive decline through social performance, dinners, witnessed conversations, manufactured incidents, and then use that social record to support a legal conservatorship filing. Once conservatorship is granted, they control your assets entirely." I know. What do I need? 3 things. First, comprehensive cognitive testing, multiple specialists, certified results, recent dates. Second, we secure and verify your existing trust documents. Nothing signable without my direct involvement. And third, he paused. We wait. We let her make her move. The more confident she gets, the sloppier she gets. And sloppy people leave evidence. She's already sloppy, I said. She just doesn't know I'm paying attention. Gerald allowed himself a small, quiet smile. Then we pay attention together. Dr. Patricia Oakes has been my physician for 18 years. She is 63 years old, Nigerian-American, with a no-nonsense manner that I have always found deeply comforting. I sat in her office 2 days after meeting with Gerald and explained what I needed. She looked at me over the top of her reading glasses. "You want a full cognitive workup. I want every test that exists. I want the results certified and notarized, and I want them repeated by 2 additional independent specialists." She studied me for a moment. "I'll make the referrals this afternoon." 3 weeks later, I had my results. Mini mental state examination, 29 out of 30. Montreal cognitive assessment, 28 out of 30. A full neuropsychological evaluation by a specialist at Cedars-Sinai. Patient demonstrates fully intact executive function, working memory, long-term recall, and judgment capacity. No evidence of cognitive impairment of any kind. Functioning at the top of the range for a woman her age. I kept those documents in the fireproof safe in my study. Alongside them, I placed Gerald's certified copies of my living trust, established in 2003, with me as sole lifetime beneficiary, untouchable by any outside party without my explicit and witnessed consent. My shield was built. Now I needed to understand my enemy. Roy Tanner, I found through my friend Beverly, whose sister had used him during a painful divorce 4 years prior. He came to my house on a Thursday afternoon, medium height, ex-police officer build starting to soften at the edges, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, a notepad in his shirt pocket. He sat across from me at the dining room table and listened to everything without writing a single thing down. When I finished, he said, "What specifically do you want to know?" "Everything. Who she was before she met my son, her financial history, prior relationships, anyone she may have done this to before. This is going to take time and it's not inexpensive. Mr. Tanner, I spent 38 years auditing companies that were hiding things. I understand what thorough investigation costs and why it's worth it. Whatever you need." He put a retainer agreement on the table. I signed it. Roy came back to me 3 weeks later with a folder that changed the shape of everything I thought I already knew. Brittany Ann Weston was born in Scottsdale, Arizona, the elder of 2 daughters to Howard and Carol Weston. Community college for 2 years, then Arizona State, where she studied communications and graduated in 2009. In 2009, the same year she graduated, Brittany entered into a relationship with a man named Vincent Aldridge. Vincent was 54 years old, a commercial real estate developer based in Austin, Texas, a widower of 3 years, successful, well-regarded in his community, and by all accounts a decent man who had the profound misfortune of meeting Brittany Weston at a fundraising gala when she was 23 years old and he was lonely. They were married in 2010. Roy laid a photograph on the table. Wedding photo, a church in Austin, white dress, flowers. Brittany looked radiant. She had the same smile she had given me the night Nathan brought her home. The same smile that didn't reach the eyes. "The marriage lasted until 2013, Roy said. 3 years. The divorce was contentious. Vincent Aldridge filed for separation after discovering that Brittany had transferred $140,000 from their joint savings account into a private account he didn't know existed. She had also signed a purchase agreement to sell a rental property they co-owned, using a power of attorney document that Vincent says he never authorized. Forgery? The signature was disputed. His attorneys believed it was forged. But proving it in court was going to be expensive and ugly, and Vincent, who was 57 by then and dealing with some health issues, decided he didn't have the fight left in him. He agreed to a private settlement. Roy turned to the next page. He paid her $185,000 to sign a non-disclosure agreement and walk away. "She did this before," I said. "She did this before," Roy confirmed. "And there's more. Before Vincent, in 2008, Brittany had been in a relationship with a widower in Philadelphia, 61 years old, retired, comfortable assets. The relationship lasted 8 months and ended abruptly when his adult children discovered that several items from their father's home, antique pocket watches, jewelry belonging to their late mother, a small original painting, had disappeared during Brittany's visits. The father refused to file a police report. He ended the relationship and never spoke of it again. "She has a type," I said quietly. "Older, widowed or divorced, assets, and either no family nearby or family that can be managed." Roy looked at me steadily. "She's done this at least twice before your son." "What's her current financial situation?" Brittany was carrying $91,000 in credit card debt across 5 separate cards. She owed an additional $24,000 to 2 private lenders. Total debt, $115,000. Her spending documented in careful detail: a $22,000 cosmetic procedure in Beverly Hills, a solo trip to Paris, business class, 9 days, an $18,000 Hermes bag on Rodeo Drive, regular spa treatments running $800 to $1,200 per visit, 3 times a month. Where was Nathan in all of this? Roy turned to the final section. "That's where it gets worse, Mrs. Hargrove. Nathan Hargrove had a clean financial history when he married Brittany. Solid credit, good salary as a senior project manager for a civil engineering firm, no significant debt. That was 6 years ago." Roy spread 3 documents across the table. The first, a personal loan agreement for $45,000, signed in Nathan's name in early 2022. The money had gone directly into an account Brittany controlled. Nathan was making the monthly payments, believing it was a home improvement loan. There had never been any home improvements. The second, a second personal loan, $35,000, taken out in late 2023. Roy pointed to the signature line. "Mrs. Hargrove, your son does not remember signing this document." The handwriting compared to verified signatures. Roy's handwriting analyst confirmed it was highly likely a forgery. The third document, a credit card statement. A card issued in Nathan's name in early 2024. Nathan had never seen it, had never activated it, had never used it. Brittany had used it for $31,000 in purchases over 11 months. I sat very still. I thought about my son, my generous, trusting son, going to work every day, paying down debts he thought were joint decisions, while the woman he believed loved him was quietly dismantling his financial life alongside mine. "He doesn't know any of this," I said. "No, ma'am. And if I tell him, he won't believe you. She's been managing his perception of you for years. You tell him this, and his first instinct, trained into him by her, will be to defend her and question your motives." I looked out the kitchen window at the lemon tree in the garden. Nathan and I had planted it together in the spring of 2002, the year after Robert died. He had dirt on his chin and was laughing about something I no longer remember, and I had thought, standing there in the warm April sunshine with my grieving heart, "At least I have this. At least I have him. He has to see it for himself," I said, "when there is no way left to deny it. That's the only way it works. Keep going. Find me everything." On Gerald's advice, and in full compliance with California law, Gerald confirmed we were on solid legal ground, and that was all I needed. I began recording every conversation that took place in my home. I also installed 3 small security cameras in my Pasadena home, living room, dining room, and front hallway, positioned by a security professional Gerald recommended. They were unobtrusive but visible to anyone paying attention. No one who came to my home in the following months paid attention. Over the next 8 weeks, I collected 6 recorded phone calls in which Brittany pressed me about updating my trust documents and simplifying my estate, 2 video recordings of visits where every conversation turned to my assets, and 1 recording that told me more about Brittany than anything else. Nathan and Brittany in my front hallway, believing I was in the kitchen. Brittany, voice low. "Just let me do the talking in there. She responds better to you, but I know how to get where we need to go. Be agreeable and follow my lead." Nathan uncertain. "Britt, she's my mom. I don't want this to feel like—" Brittany. "It's not going to feel like anything. We're helping her. That's the story. That's what we're doing. Now come on." The story. She called it the story. I stood in my kitchen with my hand pressed flat against the counter and thought, "You have just told me exactly who you are." 4 months into the investigation, Roy brought me something that moved everything into criminal prosecution territory. He read from text message transcripts. A source close to Brittany had come forward voluntarily, and Gerald confirmed the material was legally usable. Brittany to Tiffany. "The old woman is dug in like a tick, but I've got a way through. I'm working on someone to help with the paperwork. The real kind, not the kind she'd actually read carefully. Nathan is completely manageable. He believes whatever I tell him about her. The marriage has been boring as hell, but she has $16 million in real property, and I am not walking away empty-handed. I've done this before. I know exactly how long it takes." Tiffany. "What if she catches on?" Brittany. "She's 71 and alone. By the time anything becomes a problem, it'll already be done. I just need 1 signature. 1. And then we liquidate, and I'm out. We liquidate, and I'm out. She was never planning to stay. Nathan was never the destination. He was the access point. The key to a door she intended to strip and leave. I said, "Roy, find me the someone who's helping with the paperwork." It took him 11 days. Craig Delworth, 53 years old, formerly a real estate and estate planning attorney in Orange County, licensed to practice in California from 1998 through 2022. In March of that year, the California State Bar revoked his license. He had forged client signatures on property transfer documents in an estate case involving an elderly widow in Laguna Beach. Disbarred. Prohibited from practicing law in any capacity. He was currently operating out of a small office in Irvine under the title Real Estate Advisory Consultant, with a professional-looking website and business cards that said nothing about his bar status. Gerald reviewed everything and spoke plainly. "Dorothy, with what we have, Brittany's documented intent, her financial history, Roy's investigation, and a disbarred attorney preparing fraudulent documents, we have enough to go to the DA's office right now." "Not yet." A pause. "Not yet?" "She hasn't made her final move. I want her caught in the act of believing she has won. I want no ambiguity, no room for a defense attorney to suggest my documentation was preemptive." "You want her to walk through the door herself?" "I want her to walk through my door with fraudulent documents in her hand, directing people to remove my belongings, in front of witnesses, on camera, with law enforcement already on their way." Gerald was quiet. "I'll contact the DA's office and brief them. They'll be ready to move when you give the signal." "Good." "Dorothy." "Yes?" "Robert would have found you absolutely terrifying. Robert, I said, would have made the popcorn and watched. The signing happened on a Tuesday afternoon in late September of 2025, 41 days before the Saturday morning that opened this story. Brittany arrived at my Pasadena home at 2 o'clock with Craig Delworth, introduced as Mr. Peterson, a trust and estate consultant, very experienced, very discreet. Craig was wearing a charcoal suit that fit badly across the shoulders and carrying a briefcase with a small scuff on the left corner. He smiled too readily. He maintained eye contact in the way of someone who has practiced it without mastering the naturalness of it. Every camera in the room was running. They spread 12 pages across my dining table, professionally formatted, dense with legal language, official-looking seals at the top of each page. Craig walked me through it with practiced patter. Simply a beneficiary update for your existing trust. Streamlined succession, reduces estate tax burden, entirely routine. I read every page. Slowly, I asked questions about paragraphs 1, 2, and 4, and Craig answered smoothly each time. I turned to page 3, paragraph 8. The grantor hereby conveys in full and unreserved ownership the real property located at, and then the address of my Newport Beach home, to Brittany Ann Weston Hargrove, who accepts said conveyance herein. I looked up. This paragraph says I'm giving Brittany my Newport Beach house. It's structured as a gift transfer for tax purposes. The end result is the same as a direct inheritance. May I see your bar card, Mr. Peterson? A micro hesitation. Less than a second. Then he reached into his breast pocket and produced an ID card. Photograph. A name. Not Craig Delworth, but Christopher Peterson. A California state bar number. I held it as though reading it carefully, turning it toward the window where the light was better. My phone was on the table beside my right hand. I pressed the camera button. 2 photographs. The ID and a partial shot of his driver's license, visible through the open flap of his briefcase. Everything looks fine, I said. Where do I sign? Behind her careful expression, something moved in Brittany's eyes. A flicker of satisfaction, quickly controlled. I signed every page, every initial, every signature block. My hand did not tremble once. When they stood to leave, Brittany put her hand on my shoulder. She leaned down and kissed my forehead. Thank you, Dorothy. I know this wasn't easy, but you're doing the right thing for the family. Of course, dear, I said. I walked them to the door. I watched their car back out of the driveway. I watched until I could no longer see it. Then I went to my kitchen and called Gerald. It's done. I have it all on camera. Craig Delworth just spent 40 minutes pretending to be Christopher Peterson in my dining room. Gerald's exhale was the most eloquent thing I had heard in months. I'll have the DA's investigator running his real identity within the hour. Start coordinating the Saturday plan. She'll move fast now. She thinks it's over. Gerald's confirmation came within 48 hours. The documents Craig Delworth had prepared were entirely without legal validity. A disbarred attorney cannot execute estate documents. The seals were fabricated. The bar number on his ID belonged to a different attorney entirely. Every page I had signed was, in Gerald's precise phrasing, decorative paper, but it was decorative paper that proved a criminal conspiracy. Dorothy, we can arrest both of them right now. I know. Then why? Because Nathan needs to be there. He needs to see it with his own eyes, in his own mother's house, with nothing between him and the truth. If we do this through paperwork and court filings, Brittany will construct a narrative and he'll have enough distance to half believe it. But if he walks into that house and sees what she is, I paused. He won't be able to unknow it, and he needs to not be able to unknow it. For his own sake. Gerald did not argue further. We set the Saturday plan. 3 weeks later, a courier package arrived. The fake certified copies of the fraudulent documents, complete with what appeared to be official county recorder stamps. Impressively produced. Entirely false. That same afternoon, Brittany called. Her voice had shifted. The patient, concerned quality was gone. In its place, the voice of a woman who believes she is already on the other side of something difficult. Dorothy, the papers arrived. Everything is finalized. Nathan and I were thinking of coming down to Newport Beach this weekend, just to look things over. That sounds lovely. I'm planning to be in Pasadena. I have a doctor's appointment Monday. The house will be empty. Pete will be there overnight, of course. Oh, of course. We'll just do a walkthrough. Nothing major. The gate code is the same as always. Make yourselves at home. I drove to Newport Beach that afternoon and had not left since. The night before, Friday evening, I sat on the patio with my cobalt blanket and a glass of white wine I rarely allow myself. I called Gerald. Everything confirmed. Supervisory investigator Janet Pruitt from the DA's Financial Crimes Unit would arrive at 7:30 Saturday morning. Roy at 7, Gerald at 7:15. I called Pete. Whatever happens tomorrow, open the gate. Don't interfere. Call me the instant you see headlights. I did not call Nathan. His presence Saturday morning needed to be spontaneous. His arrival the result of his own alarm. Roy had confirmed Brittany had texted Nathan that she had a surprise for him at the Newport house. He would come when she didn't answer her phone. I sat with the ocean until the wine was finished. I've been taking care of our boy, I told the water, which was standing in for Robert that evening, as it sometimes does. I know it doesn't look like it from where you are, but I have been, and tomorrow I'm going to finish it. I went inside. I made chamomile tea. I went to bed. I slept the deep, clean sleep of someone who is prepared for everything that is coming. At 4:47 on Saturday morning, my phone rang. Pete's voice. Mrs. Hargrove, there's a moving truck at the gate. I looked out the window at the dark water and thought, right on time. Open it, Pete. Let them all in. By 6:15, Brittany had been in my house for just over an hour, and she had worked with impressive efficiency. I had let her. Every minute she spent directing her crew was one more minute of footage, one more set of witnessed instructions, one more layer of evidence building itself without any effort from me. I stood at the upstairs window and watched her point at Robert's paintings, at the teak patio furniture, at the wine cabinet. I watched her send a mover upstairs to find the safe. I watched her move through my home with the complete confidence of a woman who believes the hardest part is already behind her. She was wrong about that. She had been wrong about that from the very beginning. At 6:20, I heard tires on the gravel approach. Then a second car. Then footsteps, measured and purposeful. I came downstairs. Gerald Whitfield came through the door first. 70 years old, impeccable in a navy suit, carrying his leather briefcase with the quality of a man who has been waiting for this moment and has no intention of rushing it now that it has arrived. He looked at the wrapped paintings stacked near the door, at the half-dismantled living room, at the 4 movers standing in various positions of frozen uncertainty. And then he looked at me with an expression I would describe as quiet, professional satisfaction. Roy Tanner came in behind him, carrying a document box and a laptop bag. And then, through the door they held open, came the 2 people whose arrival changed the temperature of the room entirely. Supervisory Investigator Janet Pruitt of the Orange County District Attorney's Financial Crimes Unit. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back with precise neatness, badge on her hip, notepad already in her hand. Beside her, a junior investigator. Brittany took one step backward. It was involuntary. The instinctive retreat of someone who has just understood that the situation has changed fundamentally. The 4 movers had stopped completely. The young one with the baseball cap was looking between Brittany and the investigators, with the expression of someone rapidly calculating whether he was about to become accidentally involved in something serious. Gerald set his briefcase on my dining table. The sound it made, a clean, decisive thud, landed in the silence like a gavel. Good morning. I am Gerald Whitfield, legal representative for Mrs. Dorothy Hargrove. These investigators are here from the Orange County District Attorney's Office in connection with an inquiry into fraud, document forgery, and criminal conspiracy. Janet Pruitt stepped forward. Ms. Weston Hargrove, I'm Supervisory Investigator Janet Pruitt. I need you to show me the documentation establishing your legal ownership of this property. Brittany's hand went to her bag. She found the folder. The same folder she had brandished at the gate 2 hours earlier with the confidence of a woman holding a winning hand. She held it out. Her fingers were not quite steady. Janet took it, read in silence, turned pages slowly. Her expression revealed nothing. Then she looked up. Can you tell me the name of the attorney who prepared these documents? Mr. Peterson, Christopher Peterson. He's a trust and estate specialist. Is this him? Roy had opened his laptop and turned it toward Brittany. On the screen, Craig Delworth's California State Bar disciplinary record, his photograph, the date of his disbarment, the grounds. Beside it, side-by-side photographs. Craig Delworth on the left. The man Brittany had introduced as Christopher Peterson on the right. Same man. Roy connected the laptop to my television. The large screen above the fireplace that Brittany had 40 minutes earlier instructed her movers to take down carefully because it was expensive. The screen lit up. The first video, my Pasadena dining room, date and timestamp visible, Craig Delworth spreading documents, my voice asking about specific paragraphs. And there, in paragraph 8 of page 3, zoomed in clearly, the language transferring my Newport Beach property to Brittany Ann Weston Hargrove. "This says I'm giving you my house," my voice said from the speakers. "It's structured as a gift transfer," Craig said. "Entirely routine." Then the clip that followed, Brittany and Craig in my hallway as they prepared to leave. Brittany: "That went smoothly." Craig: "Cleaner than I expected." Brittany: "How long until the deed can be transferred to a buyer?" Craig: 6-8 weeks max. You get an offer, sign a purchase agreement, collect a deposit. At that point, even if something unravels downstream, the money is already moved. Brittany: "Good. I need this done." The room was silent except for the sound of the ocean through the windows. Then the second video, the Meridian Club dinner, the full damning performance of it. Brittany's speech about my memory difficulties, Carol's sympathetic nodding, the conservatorship attorney's perfectly timed interjection, and my son's unforgivable aching silence at the far end of the table. Then Roy read from the text transcripts, his voice even, without inflection, as though reading a weather report. "I am not walking away empty-handed. I've done this before. I know exactly how long it takes." The young mover with the baseball cap put his hand over his mouth. Brittany erupted. "This is entrapment. She set me up. She was never confused. This whole thing is a setup. You cannot use any of—" Gerald opened a second folder. "These are the results of Mrs. Hargrove's cognitive evaluations, conducted by 3 independent neuropsychological specialists within the past 60 days. All 3 conclude without ambiguity that my client is in full possession of her cognitive faculties. Her mini-mental state score is 29 out of 30. Her executive function is at the top of the range for a woman her age." He set the folder on the table. "I also have the recordings from the dinner at the Meridian Club in which you publicly attributed cognitive decline to my client without any medical basis before witnesses you assembled for that specific purpose. In California, deliberately and falsely representing a competent adult as mentally incapacitated in order to gain control of their assets is not merely civil fraud. It is a felony." Brittany turned to me. The last performance fell away completely. What was left underneath was something stripped and cold and furious. "You planned all of this. You let me believe—" "I let you believe what you chose to believe," I said quietly. "That I was old, that I was tired, that I could be managed. You chose those beliefs because they were convenient. I didn't manufacture your choices, Brittany. I just made sure there was a record of them." Janet Pruitt stepped forward. "Ms. Weston Hargrove, you are being placed under arrest on charges including criminal conspiracy to commit fraud, use of forged legal documents, and elder financial abuse. You have the right to remain silent." "Wait." Brittany's voice dropped. She turned to me with the last card she had left. "Dorothy, if you put me in prison, you destroy Nathan. Is that what you want? To destroy your own son?" I walked toward her. I stopped close enough that she couldn't look away. "Brittany, I am not destroying Nathan. You have been destroying Nathan for 6 years. The loans in his name, the card he never activated, the signature you forged on a $35,000 document, the marriage you told your sister was a boring necessity you intended to exit once you had what you came for." I let that land. "I am doing this because what you did is a crime, and because my son deserves to know the truth about the life he has been living, even when the truth is devastating. Especially then." Janet Pruitt gently took Brittany's arm. The handcuffs were quiet, professional, final. Brittany said nothing more. She walked out through my front door, the door she had entered 2 hours earlier, certain she was taking possession of something that was never hers, and into the gray October morning. The door closed behind her. The room breathed. I looked at the 4 movers. The young one with the baseball cap had taken his hat off and was holding it in both hands. "Ma'am, I am so sorry. She told us it was a legal move. We had no idea." "I know. You did nothing wrong. Please start putting everything back, exactly where it was." They moved quickly and without being asked twice. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Nathan. His voice carried the specific controlled alarm of someone who has received a text that made no sense and is trying not to catastrophize. Mom, Brittany sent me something about Newport Beach last night, and now she's not answering. What's going on? Are you okay? I'm perfectly fine. Nathan, I need you to come to the beach house. Right now. There are things you need to see. What kind of things? The true kind, I said. Drive carefully. I'll be here. He arrived in an hour and 20 minutes, which meant he had driven faster than he should have. He came through the front door still buttoning his jacket, hair uncombed, the dishevelment of a man who dressed in a hurry because he was frightened. He stopped just inside the threshold and took in the room. Gerald at the dining table, Roy with his laptop, the junior investigator making notes, the four movers carefully repositioning the gray sofa. He looked at me. Mom, why are there investigators here? Where is Brittany? Sit down, Nathan. Just tell me. Please sit down. Something in my voice reached him. He sat. Before Roy could begin the videos, the gate buzzer rang a second time. I nodded to Pete. Howard Weston came through the door first, heavier than I remembered, moving carefully. Behind him, Carol, mahogany hair freshly done, wearing the expression of someone who had received an alarming phone call and driven 2 hours on the strength of it. And behind Carol, Tiffany. Tiffany was 32 years old and looked in that moment like someone who had spent the drive from Scottsdale making a decision she was not entirely certain about. She came through the door and met my eyes and did not look away. That told me something important about her. Carol looked around the room, at the investigators, at Gerald's folders, at Nathan on the sofa, and finally at the absence of her daughter. Where is Brittany? Mrs. Weston, Gerald said gently. Please come and sit down. There are things your family needs to understand. Roy started the videos from the beginning. I watched the Weston family watch their daughter and sister on my television screen. Howard's face went through the progression of a man being asked to accept something that contradicts a fundamental belief, resistance, doubt, reluctant consideration, and finally a settling into grim, exhausted acknowledgement. He did not make a sound. Carol wept quietly from approximately the 3rd minute onward, pressing a tissue against her mouth. When the text messages were read aloud, "The marriage has been boring as hell. I am not walking away empty-handed. I've done this before." Tiffany made a sound that was not quite a word and put her hand over her eyes. Nathan had gone completely white. When the videos finished, the room held the specific silence of people who have just seen something they cannot unsee and are still deciding what to do with it. Tiffany spoke first. She looked at me directly. Mrs. Hargrove, I knew something was wrong. I knew it for a long time. When she showed me pictures of this house and said it would be hers soon, I asked her how. And she got angry and told me to stay out of her business. She stopped. I told myself it wasn't my place. I sat at that dinner and nodded along when she said you were losing your memory, and her voice broke. I preferred not to see. Tiffany, I said. She looked at me. You are not your sister. You made poor choices, but you are here now. That matters. Howard stood up. He walked to Janet Pruitt's junior colleague. Officer, I want you to know that my wife and I will not be providing legal assistance or financial support for our daughter's defense. Whatever she has done, she will face the consequences without us running interference. He turned to me. Mrs. Hargrove, I have no right to ask anything of you, but I am going to ask anyway because I am a father and I don't know what else to do. His voice dropped. I'm sorry. I am deeply, genuinely sorry for what my daughter did to you and to your son. Howard, I said, you raised a daughter who made choices you didn't teach her to make. That is a grief I understand. I am not holding her crimes against you. Carol made a soft sound of relief so acute it was almost painful to hear. Nathan had not spoken during any of this. He was still on the sofa, doing something I had not seen him do since he was 12 years old, crying without any attempt to stop or hide it, just sitting there with tears running down his face and his hands loose in his lap, as though the mechanisms he normally used to manage his emotions had simply gone offline. I sat down beside him, not touching, just beside him. Nathan, he turned to look at me, red eyes, entirely unguarded. The face of the boy he had been before the world asked him to be anything else. The second loan, he said. His voice was barely functional. The $35,000. Roy's analyst confirmed. I didn't sign that. No, you didn't. She forged my name. Yes. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. How long have you known? Long enough to protect myself. and long enough to build a case she cannot argue her way out of. Why didn't you tell me? I waited until he lowered his hands. Because you would not have believed me, I said. Not then. She had been preparing you for years, training you to hear anything I said as the interference of a controlling mother. If I had come to you 8 months ago with what I knew, she would have turned it around, and you would have apologized to her for my behavior. He opened his mouth, closed it, because he knew I was right. I needed you to see it with nothing between you and the truth. I'm sorry that this is how it had to happen, but I could not find another way. Nathan sat on that sofa for a long time after the investigators had finished their work. Gerald had gathered his documents, and Roy had packed his box. Howard and Carol and Tiffany had moved to the patio, giving us the room. It was just the two of us. The house was exactly as it had been at 4:47 that morning. Every painting on its wall, every chair in its position, the ocean visible through the French doors, indifferent and eternal and beautiful. Nathan looked around the room with the expression of a man recalibrating his understanding of the last 6 years, one item at a time. Mom, I called you selfish. You did. I let her call you confused, invasive. I let her... At that dinner, his voice failed. He tried again. I sat there and let her tell everyone you were losing your mind, and I said nothing. No, I said. You didn't. How do you not hate me? I thought about how to answer honestly. Not with the reflexive reassurance that would be easy and cheap, but with the truth, which is always more complicated and more useful. I don't hate you because I know what manipulation looks like from the inside. It doesn't announce itself. It builds so gradually that by the time you are fully inside it, the shape of your own thinking has changed, and you don't know when it happened. She didn't turn you against me in a day. She did it over years, and by the time she needed you fully on her side, she had already made that the path of least resistance. That doesn't excuse what I did. No, it doesn't. I'm offering it as context, not excuse. There's a difference. He was quiet for a moment. I have spent 3 years not trusting my own instincts. She had an explanation for everything. Every time something felt wrong, she had a framework already built that explained why my instinct was the problem. He shook his head. I didn't realize it was happening. That is exactly what that kind of person does. They don't override your judgment. They replace it, so gradually you mistake their thinking for your own. He looked at his hands. I'm 51 years old, he said, and I let someone hollow me out completely, and I didn't notice until my mother had to build a criminal case to show me what was in front of my face. Nathan, no, Mom, let me say it. He looked up. I have been a terrible son. Not just recently. For years. You have been alone since Dad died, and I was so busy being managed that I forgot I had a mother who needed me to show up. I felt the ache of a truth I had been carrying for a long time, finally named out loud by someone else. I want to fix it, he said. Tell me what that looks like. Tell me what you need from me, and I will do it. I looked at my son, this middle-aged man with his father's jaw and his father's fundamental decency, and years of damage done to both, and I felt something loosen in my chest that I had not realized I had been holding closed. First, find a therapist, a good one, someone who specializes in exactly what you've been through, because what happened to you has a name and there are people trained to help you understand it. He nodded. Second, the debts are yours. I am not going to pay them for you, not as punishment, but because working through them yourself is part of how you rebuild. You are capable of it. Third, live alone for a while. Learn what your own life feels like when it is not organized around someone else's agenda. And fourth, we have dinner together, every Friday, at the Pasadena house. Wherever we are in rebuilding what we had, we have dinner. That is not negotiable. For the first time since he had walked through the door that morning, something in Nathan's face shifted towards something that was not grief or shame, something smaller and quieter and more durable. Every Friday, he said. Every Friday. He leaned forward and hugged me. Not a careful, uncertain hug, but the hug of someone who has found something he had lost and is not inclined to let go of it quickly. I held on. We stayed that way for a long time, mother and son in my living room, with the ocean outside and the paintings back on the walls and the cobalt blanket folded over the arm of the chair where I had left it that morning. My house, I thought. My son. My life. Intact. 6 months later, on a Monday morning in April 2026, the jacaranda trees doing their annual extravagance outside Gerald's office windows, Nathan sat beside me at the conference table and looked at the documents spread before us. He had done everything I asked. He had found a therapist named Dr. Franklin Osgood, who specialized in recovery from coercive control. He was paying his debts, monthly, steadily, without complaint. He had moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Glendale, modest and clean, and described it to me as genuinely mine for the first time in years. Every other week, a brief text. Session 14. Starting to understand some things I didn't before. Brittany had entered a guilty plea 3 weeks earlier. With the weight of evidence against her, her attorney had advised against a trial. She was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. Craig Delworth received 2.5 years for practicing law without a license, forgery, and conspiracy. I had not attended either sentencing. I had nothing left to say to either of them. Nathan looked at the new trust documents with the careful neutrality of a person who has resolved not to have expectations. "Before you explain," he said, "I want to say something. Whatever you've decided, whatever this says, I accept it. I have no standing to ask for anything." "The Pasadena house goes to you," I said. "Outright. It is your home, your father's home. I want it to stay in our family." He blinked. "The Santa Monica condo will be sold after my death. Half of that sale goes to you, roughly $1.7 million at current valuation. The other half—" Gerald slid a document across the table. Nathan read the name at the top, the Dorothy and Robert Hargrove Foundation for Elder Financial Justice. I watched my son read the mission statement. Free legal assistance for elderly people facing financial abuse by family members, psychological support, emergency resources, advocacy. When he looked up, his eyes were bright. "Mom, this is exactly right. The Newport Beach house goes entirely to the foundation," I said. "The full value, $6.2 million. I want it to have enough resources to operate for decades." "That means you're giving away most of it." "I'm giving it to something that needs it. There are thousands of women like me, Nathan. Older, alone, with assets they built themselves, and people who see those assets as a resource to be extracted. Most of them don't have a Gerald Whitfield. Most of them don't have 38 years of financial expertise. Most of them lose." I straightened the papers in front of me. "I was lucky. I was trained and stubborn and prepared. I want to use what I have to make sure some of those other women are luckier too." Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then, "What are the conditions for my inheritance?" "Continue therapy for a minimum of 2 years. Maintain your finances responsibly. Volunteer with the foundation a minimum of 10 hours per month." "That's it?" "And Friday dinners," I said. "Non-negotiable." He smiled. "The real one. The one that looks like his father's. Non-negotiable," he agreed. It is now February 2026, and I am sitting on the back patio of my Newport Beach house. The sky is doing what it always does at this hour, arguing with the ocean about which one is more beautiful, neither willing to concede. I have my Earl Grey. I have my cobalt blanket. I have my 53 square feet of morning peace that belong entirely to me. The Dorothy and Robert Hargrove Foundation for Elder Financial Justice opened its doors 6 weeks ago in a rented office in downtown Pasadena. 3 attorneys, 2 psychologists, 1 social worker. In 6 weeks, we have taken on 14 cases, 14 families where someone built something over a lifetime and someone else decided that effort was theirs to take. In 9 of those cases, we have already made progress toward restoring what was taken. Nathan volunteers every Saturday morning, handling intake and scheduling. He is not a natural administrator, but he is a genuinely kind man, and the people who come through our doors, frightened, embarrassed, often convinced they should have seen it coming, respond to kindness in ways that matter more than efficiency. He introduced me 4 months ago to a woman named Claire Donnelly. She teaches 2nd grade at an elementary school in Pasadena. She has a laugh that fills a room and a way of listening that makes you feel like the most important person in it. When Nathan brought her to my kitchen for dinner, lasagna, Chianti, the good dishes, she looked around my home with the appreciation of someone who notices what is real and personal rather than what is expensive. She asked about the lemon tree. I told her Nathan and I planted it the spring after his father died. She said, "That's a beautiful thing to have done together." I liked her immediately and completely. The door behind me opens. Footsteps I know as well as my own heartbeat, a little heavier than they used to be, deliberate in the way of someone learning to move through his own life at his own pace. Nathan comes out onto the patio carrying a mug of coffee. He drove down from Pasadena last night so we could watch the sunrise together, which has become, over the past months, one of our rituals. A thing that belongs to us and no one else. He sits in the chair beside me without speaking. We watch the sky turn. After a while, he says, "Claire wants to know if you're free for Easter." "Tell Claire I'm free for every Easter she's willing to have me." He smiles at his coffee cup. More silence. The good kind. "Mom, Osgood gave me an exercise last week. He asked me to think about how I'd know, going forward, when I'm actually seeing someone clearly versus seeing what I want to see." "What did you decide?" "I decided that I know Claire is genuinely good, not because I need her to be, not because it's convenient, but because I've been watching carefully, the way you taught me to watch, and everything I see is consistent. She is who she says she is." He pauses. "I wanted to say that out loud to someone I trust, to see how it sounds." I look at my son. "It sounds like a man who has learned to trust himself again," I say. "It sounds exactly right." He nods once, looks back at the water. The sun comes over the horizon in a broad sweep of gold and rose, and the ocean catches all of it and throws it back doubled. I pull the cobalt blanket up around my shoulders. Robert's blanket. My blanket. The one that has been on this patio through a different kind of grief and a quiet war and a slow, imperfect, genuine rebuilding. I think about what I have. A house that is mine. A son who is present. A foundation doing work that matters. A doctor who calls me obnoxious with affection. A lawyer who will apparently never retire. And 53 square feet of mourning that belong entirely to me. I think about what I learned. That patience is not passivity. That calm is not surrender. That being old does not mean being finished, and being alone does not mean being without power, and being underestimated, being seen as tired and confused and past your useful years, is not a verdict. It is an opportunity. I take a sip of my tea. I watch the ocean. I smile. If this story reached something in you, if you have ever been underestimated, dismissed, or made to feel like a problem to be managed, I want you to know you are not alone. Elder financial abuse is real, it is common, and it is almost always committed by someone the victim loves and trusted. If you or someone you know is experiencing financial pressure or manipulation from family members, please reach out to the National Elder Law Foundation or your state's Adult Protective Services. A trusted elder law attorney can make all the difference. And if you believe in the particular kind of justice that comes from patience, preparation, and refusing to be anyone's victim, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, because stories like this one need to be told. Dignity is not inherited. It is built. It is defended. It is protected. And it is absolutely, unconditionally worth fighting for.